I've already introduced Mary as the practidiem that's going to lead this panel discussion with a couple of our customers. 3 of our customers are coming up, as well as a speaker for later in the day, Robert. So we're going to let them introduce themselves in the interest of time. And so, Mary, I'll let you take over.
We have a mic.
Yep, their mics are over here.
All right. You can tell I'm in supply chain. I'm already changing like the setup, the warehouse layout. I want to be closer to them, not too far away. So, let me get great.
Look how adaptive I was.
I know. Testing. All right.
Became a stagehand.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is an example of resilience and agility. We talked yesterday, and Robert, you flew in last night, and we are pulling together a panel for you to do a just-in-time delivery of, thoughts and insights from the think tank yesterday and how it relates to the conversations we had today. I want to do a quick time check. Can Aaron, Brian, can you tell me what time? Because I can't actually even see when we should end. So I'll be looking at my phone. About 12:30. Okay, thanks. Okay. Well, great. What I'd like to do is if you could just briefly introduce yourself, tell us the company you're with and a little bit about what they do. And Robert, I'll start with you because you have a longer story and you're a speaker later today, so we'll hear more.
Hi, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Robert Martichenko. I'm the retired CEO of the Lean Core Supply Chain Group. Retired December 31st of this past year, and I'm currently working with a university in North Carolina and some other third-party logistics companies in the workforce development space, and we're doing research and education to see how we're going to try to create some meaningful work environments to tackle all of these things that all the speakers have been talking about this morning.
Hi, everyone. My name is Troy Stevenson. I lead the logistics procurement group for Kerry Flavor and Ingredients. We're the largest food company that you probably never heard of. So we have about 100 manufacturing locations throughout the world and about 57 in the U.S. and Canada. So we make about flavors and ingredients that go in about 80% of the food items that you'll find in your grocery store. So if you had a Starbucks coffee or a fried chicken sandwich or something with vinegar or liquid smoke, it probably came from Kerry. So glad to be here.
Good morning. Corey O'Connor here with Conagra Brands. I manage transportation procurement for outbound finished goods, rail. I also manage our international business and our managed logistics. I've definitely heard of you. So we're a food manufacturers, and some of you who may be familiar with some of our products, but not our name. For instance, Marie Callender's, Bird's Eye, Slim Jims, David Seeds, products like that. Really appreciate being here, the time that you've given us, the opportunity that you've given us to engage. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Good morning. I'm Ryan Miller with Spangler Candy Company, just up the road in Bryan, Ohio. So I'm the vice president of supply chain. Spangler Candy, we make Dum Dum lollipops, candy canes, all the fun candies y'all enjoy every season. We have about 500 employees in Bryan. Very, very close partner with Keller on a lot of things with co-packing, logistics and warehousing, so happy to be here and help.
Cool. All right, just you can keep that one down there, and then I'll kind of hand to you, Robert, when I ask questions. All right. Let me do one quick test. Can you all hear me if I talk really loud like this? No? Okay. All right, then we will stick with the mic. Normally, I do not have a problem projecting, but this room is rather large. So it was interesting to hear Brian and Eric and Jim talk about some of the things we talked about yesterday. VUCA came up, and we talked about supply chain networks, so like the changing from a chain to a network. I'd love to start with how you see the role of supply chain changing. And Ryan, I'm actually going to start with you because you had a great story yesterday about kind of how your role in that end-to-end space has changed and your role with Walmart and everything. So.
Well, yeah, just personally, our journey for Spangler Candy Company, smaller manufacturer, purchasing, logistics, shipping used to be called. It was all separate functions, separate areas of reporting. Sort of what I did, I sort of grew in within that vertical, within that space, those functions, and now supply chain is a single cohesive group. It's purchasing, it's planning, it's execution, generally the same thing, and also logistics. It's all one cohesive group. And now we also have forecasting, and we have customer service and order entry, and these things are all now considered supply chain functions. So within our company, that's certainly evolved in the last 10 years or so. But then now, to me, since 2020, what's really changed, our customers have come to us more to be collaborative. Walmart, is this huge giant behemoth. We're a little Spangler Candy Company. They are working with us more than ever because they know that they have to if they want to get product. The retailers, our customers, are much more, say desperate might not be the right word, but they're happy to get inventory when they can. And because of that, supply chain has now had a greater role in that. I've been on sales calls to Walmart, which has never happened before, and it's to present that supply chain view to our customers to help them understand what we need as a company to put product on their shelves on time.
Just to build on that, I think Dr. Tonkin said it well when he said that when he said this whole idea of the chain is going to be questioned, and that's going to happen now. This whole concept and paradigm of the chain is going to be challenged, and this idea of the end-to-end network is going to be what we're going to start building. We're going to have some challenges with that relative to technologies and blockchain and cybersecurity, and it seems like every time we try to do something good, there's some bad guy trying to do something bad. But I believe that the technologies are now there, in particular with that blockchain and the AI and things Dr. Tompkins was talking about. But this end-to-end focus, this idea that you don't know who your tier 2 or tier 3 supplier is and you only know your tier 1, that's just simply going to change. And the entire network is going to become one, and flow is going to become the focus.
I love that we're going to be able to share that information with everybody else, and we can have an intelligent conversation about it, and they know what we're talking about. Outside of conferences like this where we gather, we walk out of this conference and nobody else has any idea what we're doing here, right? Now all of a sudden they know, right? It's become more prominent in the consumer eye, we've always been cool, but now they know we're cool, right? As we've had that prominence, there's always been a little bit, there's a concern that we've got a negative view of supply chain as it becomes broken. But I think that, as we approach this thing, we're still in the wave, so to speak, and we may be coming out of it a little bit. But as we look at it, I think that we talked about it yesterday a little bit, and you never waste a good crisis, right? Because now's the time when we have that prominence, when we have the opportunity to speak and folks are listening, we have the opportunity to incite change and really get the support that we need to really induce it.
Yeah, and I think if I can add, this is the first time that I've really had a direct connection to the C-level at our company. So when the CEO, CFO, Chief Supply Chain Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, when they call me direct now, that's a lot different. A few years ago, we talked about trying to get a seat at the table. We're at the head seat now at the table, and having the opportunity to actually prep our CEO for earnings releases at the end of a quarter, right? That was something I didn't envision 2 years ago, but it's put a lot of attention on the weaknesses that we have, and I think we've known this in supply chain for a long time that they existed, but they're here and we're paying for it, right? So, as we've seen a lot of this inflation, in logistics and transportation, it's visible, and now we have the opportunity, to take the crisis, invest in systems and technology and have support like we've never seen before. But the expectations there that, coming into next year, that things do run smoother, that we do take cost out and run more efficiently.
I really like the opportunity that's presented to kind of snowball off of what we had previously. So, right, the last 4 or 5 years, everybody's been talking about the Amazon effect, right, and the implications, and some of that really is that it's required B2B to perform like a B2C, right? Customers want to know where their product is right now. They want to order it today, and they want it to be here in 48 hours. That wasn't a business problem 5 years ago, you know. Now it's a business problem, and we really didn't know what to do about it, but it's been sink or swim over the course of the last 3 years, and you know, we are here. We have been swimming, and we continue to swim.
Yep. That is great insights on where the future is headed, and it's really good to hear your individual perspectives of how these higher level concepts kind of come home for you and your companies. Given the audience, it would be awesome to hear what you think your partners, your best partners, what can they do to help with your resilience? You know, whether that's continuity plans and your preparedness. What do you think their role is, and what have you seen the best ones do for you?
So on the supplier side, you know, for a manufacturer, you're always concerned about, are you going to get the ingredients that you ordered? And so one of the first things that your partners can do, Jim said it, there's one single truth. Give us the honest answer. When are you going to have it? Not the answer that we want to hear. Tell us the real thing. Be transparent about it. If there's a problem, we'll deal with it, but we can't act properly if we don't know the truth. So being honest, being transparent as partners, and that goes with relationships. We talked a ton, I thought, yesterday about relationships and how important that is and how that's probably evolved, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years. It's not as transactionally more, you know, the best supplier relationships are the ones that you have the best relationships with. And that pays dividends in times like this when you need to know the right answers and you need your partners to step up for you.
I think that one of the most important things is that we just now know that we're actually partners, and I really hope that that stays. We had to be partners in the last 2 years, and I really hope that that stays in our world. It's always sad for me, like when we heard Eric talk this morning, he said, okay, well, trucking rates are going to go up by 3%, but then the following cycle, they'll go down by 3%. And all I could remember was my first days at Challenger Motor Freight when it was a carrier's market. We were told to go out and get more money, and then as soon as it became a shipper's market, we got called in and got hammered over the head. It was like, why can't we just be partners and just treat each other with respect, regardless of what might be happening in the economy? So the first thing was just remember that we are partners and that we are in this together. And if we can somehow try to avoid these things like the concept of the fines, thinking that a fine actually is going to change the outcome of the process. The truck might have been late because of processes, not because there wasn't good intent to try to be on time. So how does a punishment actually change my ability to be on time? We need to work together. We're in the process business and we're partners, and I just hope that we can remember that going forward.
Meetings will continue until morale improves. You know, we did spend a lot of time on relationships, and so I won't belabor it, but the relevance of it, I think, is over the course of the long term, you tend to mitigate or hedge yourselves against the peaks and the valleys, right? So that you know, you can normalize your budgets, you can normalize your volumes and your capacity. But moreover, on the technology side in partnership, what we've experienced is that, you know, I won't get too deep into API here, but as an example, API. A lot of our carriers have come to us with API because it improves efficiencies on their side, right? Where a lot of folks are spending a lot of time pricing spot rates, for instance, and trying to find a truck and trying to figure out whether or not the hours of service or the appointments are going to work out. What a lot of carriers have done is they've implemented API, where it's a real-time pricing engine, either touched by a human or run by their rating algorithms, and they feed it over to us. And while it sounded great on the front end to improve work streams on the carrier side, initially we didn't see any opportunity or value add to our side, right? The rate's still the same. The truck still needs to show up. But we found indirect benefits, right? If we could get real-time pricing from the carriers, we can award that carrier sooner. And if we award that carrier sooner, then we're going to find that carrier is going to appoint that load sooner and use up the matrix in the appointment schedule instead of appointing it later and finding out there's no appointment. That shipment gets pushed, the delivery gets pushed, and it's underutilization of your assets, right? So there were a lot of small, indirect, nuanced benefits to a lot of the collaboration that we've seen in supply chain, just as a function of what we experienced in the course of the last few years.
Yeah, I think, and if I can add to that, I think about, our logistics companies and how we work together. COVID did some good things. I think we realized how late we could be, how flexible people could be to get deliveries. I think, what we're kind of seeing is we have a lot of people that, as you talked about the chain, right? You might be the strongest link in a chain, but you still have, some weak spots there. This topic of appointments really seems to be the elevated one, and everybody's kind of going to this as a saving grace to make things connect better. But now we have all these inefficient appointments or inability to get appointments, or I have to pick a time 10 days in advance when to deliver, and I don't necessarily know when my truck's going to arrive 10 days from now, right? It's going to be going from Wisconsin to Florida, and I'll take 3 p.m. because that's all I can get. My truck arrives there at 8, and we burn up, 7 hours of a driver's time, right? And so I still think we have a lot of waste to eliminate. I think, from a partner standpoint, we still have to address that issue. I think, we have technology, we have a lot more investment. But I think, as we look into 2023 and forward, there's some things we have to do to take waste out to help us as a whole.
All right, I gotta take it back. Thanks. So actually, I'm going to call an audible and change it a bit and just do a follow-up on some of the meat we got into yesterday. It got really interesting once we went a layer deeper. So if you could give specific advice for an action within supply chain that your partner would take, what would you ask them to do that would materially impact your efficiency or your resilience?
Well, that's a softball for me, Mary, because I'm a lean guy. The most amazing thing, the most amazing conversation a partner and a customer can have together is in a very respectful way to tell each other how each of them is putting waste in each other's system and not get offended by it, not take it personally, and just go, wow, I had no idea we were doing that to you. And I hate to say this, but this is more about customer to supplier. Customers need to be able to say to their suppliers and their partners, what can we do to help you, as opposed to it always being, this is what you now need to do to help us. And these conversations, if we had an hour, I can tell you about some of these that I've been involved with that were very, very positive, and I've also been in some of them where the customers literally left the room and literally said, do you not really want our business anymore? How dare you ask us if we've put your waste in your system? So to be that brutally honest with each other in a benevolent, respectful, dignified way is so important.
Yeah, I'll talk about visibility, because I think we still have a massive gap, and we think about all this technology, and what drives me nuts is, like, a truck has 3 GPSs, right? One on the truck, one on the driver's phone, one on a trailer, and we can only get to like 70% visibility. And so when we're meeting with one of our tech suppliers recently, we asked them, like, hey, what's your best customer hitting? And like 75% at most, right? And so we have this unreliable way of tracking and knowing what's coming inbound, and it has huge ripples, especially right now that we're still hand to mouth on a lot of items that we don't know where trucks are and where goods are, and we have no visibility. It affects production planning, and then trucks show up, and it happens every day right now in many facilities. And we got to figure out how to bridge that gap and understand how we can get better visibility that's actually accurate.
So we've spent a lot of time with our suppliers. I mentioned earlier, kind of believe in going deep with fewer suppliers, so having fewer suppliers, better relationships. But with that, in uncertain times, you have to have redundancy. You have to understand from your suppliers what's plan B, option out. I think that's what Jim just said was a great point. If option 1 doesn't work, what's the next option? So if we trust you to be our single source or one of 2 sources, something doesn't happen right, what's the next plan? So laying out specific redundancy plans, not just sort of kind of, yeah, trust us type stuff. No, it's specifically what's going to happen. If this plant goes down, this material doesn't come in, what is the next plan? And there's things like material substitutions. I think we've all seen for ingredients, materials, you've seen substitutions happen. This isn't, Plan B is not quite as good as Plan A, but it's good enough for now. It's better than nothing. And so those type of redundancy plans, to me, are extremely important from all partners and suppliers in the entire network.
I'll start by saying that the younger generation gets a terrible rap, just a terrible rap. We all did when we were younger, right, by the generation before us. But what I'll say is that let your lieutenants involve themselves, right? Let them engage them and promote their involvement in conversation. And the point to that is that we need velocity to operationalization, right? We've got these digital platforms, we've got these tools, but without executing against them in a quick fashion, as we've learned, it really just spin your tires, right? So what we've really found within our organization within the last few years is, man, these guys are sharp. Not only are they sharp, they've got great ideas, but it really took a while for us, even during the last 2 years, to promote it internally. So we'd have these meetings and, there'd be 2 or 3 people talking, right? But as the pandemic grew and they got a little bit more confidence, we found that the entire room was starting to speak up. And all of a sudden we came to this panoply of ideas from which we could choose, this basket. And, we talked through those things, but I would say that, the utilization of talent within your organization, the diversity of opinion and thought and experience are going to go a long way for you and us to come up with ideas that we can share back and forth, so that we can collaborate a little bit more to understand where pain points truly are. Because let's be real, a lot of times when a service provider comes, a lot of times you just want to share the answer that wants to be heard, right? We treat them like our parents. We tell them what they want to hear, but we don't lie to them, right? And I think that we require more open engagement, and that's what's going to allow us to move forward at a speed that can keep clip with the demands that are set on us.
Excellent. Yeah, I think having that more detailed insight into what would really make a difference for you helps a lot. I'm going to encourage you, let's put Aaron to work and use Slido and feel free to ask some questions. Panels are way more fun, too, if they engage you in the conversation. But I have a lot of questions, so I'll keep rolling, but feel free to jump in with your own through the app if you would like. And then Aaron, just wave if you want to jump in with one from the audience. Let's talk about, I loved that integration of planning, execution, and I know, Robert, you've got really good stories for, how that works from a lean perspective as well. And then you all had great insights into how that has changed in your organizations. So if you could talk about how you see the future of planning execution changing for you.
Oh, we're breaking up the order. No, we're process people. We can't do that. So for me, traditionally, what we're talking about here is S&OP. And one of the problems with S&OP is that there was never, and I'm going to geek out on us here, but there was never PDCA around S&OP. So we established these sales and operations planning processes, which brings us all together to say, yeah, let's make this because we think we're going to sell this. But then there's never a reflection, okay, did we in fact build what we said we were going to build? And did we in fact sell what we said we were going to sell? We're just on to the next S&OP cycle instead of having a plan, do, check, act around the S&OP. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the S&OP cycles might be quarterly, might be monthly in a good case. And so it's just old and we're on to new things. So what's the point of wasting time to go reflect on it? So I think one of the biggest things that's going to happen, and this goes to what the speakers said this morning, is our cycles are just going to get faster. S&OP is going to probably get to be a weekly cycle. And so at some point with technologies that we've been talking about, it may become a daily cycle. That'll be really neat, but I think we're going to at least get to weekly cycles very quickly.
So one thing for us that we've done is just utilize the data that's out there. So if you're selling to retailers, the POS point of sale data from Walmart, it's nearly instantaneous. So we can know right now how our Halloween sets are doing today, this week, last week, the previous week versus last year, expectations, and use that data in real time right now, not just wait until the orders come in or don't come in, figure out what the consumer is doing with our product now in anticipation of the order. And then the other thing really for us is it's almost changed. It's not so much what can you sell, it's what can you make. You know, we talk about labor constraints, ingredient constraints, just supply constraints in general. It's almost like the sales team comes to us and says, well, what do you think you can do? And then we'll go sell it. It's almost flipped a little bit, whereas I would say before, if supply is unlimited, they say, hey, we're going to go try to sell this, this, and this. You guys make it. That's almost flipped a little bit for us.
So, give me just a moment here. Let me think through this here. So I would think that, I'll go back to the first question. The first question was, the role of supply chain. I think that what we've done internally is that, for the most part, demand signals have always been a challenge, right? S&OP is always challenged to look at 140 macro or microeconomic indicators to tell us what exactly is going to be purchased, et cetera, right? I think what we found is that in the current cycle, we are driving demand. It's not the consumer driving demand, right? Whether it be material availability or labor or whatever it is, when you go in your grocery store where you used to have 20 different options of the same product that you were going to buy, now you see 5. That's by design. It's a function of labor, a function of materials, changeover, et cetera, to really get the product out to market when the consumer really needs it the most. So I would say the first thing is recognizing that there has been a shift, and to a large extent, we are putting a lot more pressure on demand than we were seeing conversely in the past, right? The second is the way that we optionalization, right? I believe that was the term. So in optionalization internally, we have to decide what we're going to execute on, how fast we're going to execute on it. And I think that the tools that we've got now have created such agility that we have the ability to perform optimally. I like the word optimally still, in that we get to choose what direction that we want to go, and we get to do it ever so nimbly. And I think that nimbleness, in large part are a function of the things that we've already talked about, but to lose sight of our ability to be nimble and to respond quarterly, weekly, or whatever the cycle period may be is going to be ever more important.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the planning cycle will be much shorter. And we chatted about yesterday about forecast, and forecasts have always been bad, right? And then now we've hit this point where you're almost hitting the point where they're useless or non-existent or don't exist. Because there's so many things that are happening in real time with material shortages and customer changes. And what we've seen, especially in the food ingredients, is customers have changed their formulations, right? There's been a shortage of products. They've done SKU rationalization, or we've had price increases, and now the product won't sustain at a certain price point, and so that gets delisted. And you have all these different factors that affects our production. And so all that multiplies, and so we have this forecast, but you can't rely on it and have wasted inventory. So yeah, it's definitely going to be shorter. What it's going to look like, I don't know yet.
Thanks. You mentioned yesterday, no forecasting. Yeah, it's just, and I like the weekly, daily. I think that kind of that shift in planning and this integration of planning execution leads us to this whole thing of why AI and machine learning, using AI to plan, will get us to a place where we can focus on exceptions. So thinking about exceptions, if you project into the future, it's 2025, and you're looking back on your supply chains or supply chain as a whole, and you pick one thing that really got fixed over the next 3 years, what would you pick?
I think we kind of said earlier, but supply chain is known now. It's a known thing, and I think there's more respect. There's more there's more involvement from supply chain's role in not just the organization, but in our customers and our collaboration with our partners and our suppliers. I think the viewpoint has changed. The mentality has changed, where it's not as transactional, and I think supply chain's role in the organization with your customers is much more involved than it ever has been before, and I think that's here to stay.
I've got two. One is inspirational, and the other one is aspirational. The inspirational one is boring data integrity. With all this talk about AI and machine learning and a blockchain and everything, it's not going to work if data isn't accurate. And so even today, MRP systems and bill of materials and PFEPs, if they're not accurate, they're not actually helpful. In fact, they're unhelpful. That's the inspirational part. The aspirational part is around people. We have, I'm going to steal a little bit of my thunder, but half of the working people in the United States, and it goes to Canada and other countries as well, are paid by the hour. There's cultures of respect have not been built, and they have to be built. And I don't think we have 3 years to do it. I think we've got to start doing it right now, and I can tell the Keller culture has started a long time ago because there's a moral compass here that's just so clear and obvious. But to me, that's what's fundamentally going to have to change.
I would say automated visibility. You know, we've talked about transparency a little bit, and I love that you said data quality, because it really this requires that. But the automated visibility in and of itself is that, you know, folks want to know where their product is. So that's a simple one, but it's really utilization of that visibility, right? What do we do with that to actually make it actionable, right? A good example, I think, would be our root cause analysis that we run internally. So we've got probable cause analytics, and that sounds super complicated, but it's not. For the most part, when a truck is late, for instance, it's because they were held at previous, it's because the RDD was pushed out, product was not available, truck broke down. So it could be one of 5 things that go on, and very, very many times they fall into these specific buckets, right? Was it shipper-related, receiver-related, something else like the weather, right? And what we use that for is we use it for exception management for punitive customers that charge fines. And when we're able to automate that process, what we found is the feedback from our customers, they love it, because that takes work, that takes burden off of their workload as well, right? So that they can better utilize their human capital. So we've received a lot of great feedback on being able to use that visibility and turn that visibility into automated actionable items, so that it can be beneficial to both sides and really, you know, grease business, so to speak.
Yeah, when I think about, you know, really that order to cash cycle and the amount of manual touch points, 3 years from now, we better fix that. The amount of manual touch points in that is pretty phenomenal. A lot of it, you know, does go back to master data and data integrity. But what I've seen here, especially in the past 2 years, is when a problem happens, somebody gets involved, they make a decision that really just addresses their function and creates a whole bunch of downstream effects. And trying to get to that zero touch, I don't think we'll maybe hit zero touch, but I think there's a lot of things we can do to improve it, especially with the technology that we have in our hands. We just haven't really unleashed that yet.
You know, that incited a thought there. So one of the visibility things that we use are status messaging, right? And you know, carriers, they roll their eyes every time we say status messaging, because it's just another set of numbers to punch into the computer, right? But just to, you know, I digress a little bit on the status messaging. Basically, status messaging will tell us whether or not the carrier has set the appointments, whether or not they've arrived, departed, whether or not the shipment is closed out. Has it arrived to the location to which it's supposed to arrive, and was it on time, right? But it's not just necessarily for our tracking purposes. It's not for us to just, you know, gather this data up and tell the carrier whether or not they were on time. What happens is that in the background, as the Amazon effect has taken hold and the B2C has now moved into the B2B space, is that our customers now have the same demand of us as a vendor, as a supplier, right? So when they want to ask us those questions, they've got a few options to communicate. They can do email, they can do a phone call, and they do all of the above, right? Everything. And what status messaging does is it allows us an automatic feed to the customer so that they know, in general, what's going on with their product without having to reach out. So it's been quite an improvement in the way that we operate. So that I would say that those type of efficiencies are really going to allow us to move forward in visibility. But the way that we've actually executed that and gotten the buy-in from the carriers is that we told our carriers that, you know, this is optional, first of all. You don't have to do this. You can still do the payment cycles, whatever you want to do. If you want to get paid in 45 days, your terms are 30 days, but it takes you 2 weeks to get your bills, totally fine. But I'll tell you what, if you do your status messaging, by the time you do your status messaging that says that this thing's delivered, we will start our invoicing process so that your base, your line haul, and your fuel will automatically get paid. Your 30-day cycle starts there. Now your days to cash are 30 days instead of 45 days. So we've gotten a lot of buy-in from our carriers because, I mean, at the end of the day, that cash flow within the carrier sector is huge. And if we can shave off 33% of that, while still trying to gain what we are trying to achieve for efficiencies on our side, on the customer side. It's a win-win for all of us. Appreciate you bringing that up.
That is awesome. Okay, I said that I wanted to put Aaron to work, and I think you got a Slido question?
I do have one question. It's for Ryan. With Robert up there representing Lean, I'd love to hear Ryan discuss the story of eliminating waste by introducing the mystery flavor Dum Dum.
I would love to take credit for this, but unfortunately, this was well before I started at Spangler. So the mystery flavor Dum Dum. All right, so I guess we have to start with how Dum Dums start. They start in a big 100-pound batch of candy. So picture corn syrup, sugar. Let's say your favorite flavor is strawberry. So it's a 100-pound batch of strawberry. Well, that strawberry batch is a big blob. It goes down into a rope, essentially. So it's a continuous rope of candy that then goes into the press. It's cut, the stick goes into it, it's wrapped, it goes on. So we don't have enough presses to make all 16 flavors all at once. So what you have to do is you have one flavor to the next flavor. So you go from strawberry, the next flavor then becomes grape. Well, instead of having the gap in the ropes and between the batches of candy, where it's downtime, it's inefficiency, it's everything else, those ropes are combined. So for a period of time, you have a strawberry batch of candy connected in the rope to a grape batch of candy. That section is then routed to the mystery wrap where you don't have to say what flavor it is, right? Because worst thing would be to have the grape go to the strawberry wrap, right? I know it's simple, but that's for us, that changes. There's no downtime in how that press runs. So we make 13 million Dum Dums a day, and there's no downtime.
That is awesome. Okay.
What systems?
Oh, hey.
Well, I'd just like to say that what was just described there was an extremely lean process. So I'm fully on board with everything that you guys did.
Okay. So what systems do you have in place to ensure your data is accurate today?
If you could and that's general for okay. So what systems do you have in place to ensure your data is accurate today?
The short answer is we don't. We're just like all of you, right? I think that it's more processes in place. We could call them systems, but we've all worked with SAP, right? And once you're out of the box with SAP, you've got no support, and you try to figure out, how do you integrate that ERP with the rest of your systems, with bolt-ons, add-ons, whatever it may be. What we've done in the background really is that, one of the things that we talked about, let me back up, is that, the manufacturing site, they want the order number, right? That's the language that they speak. The transportation and logistics department, they want the shipment number. That's the language that they speak. The carrier, they want the bill of lading, right? So I think the first step really is normalizing the language. One of my biggest pet peeves I'd mentioned yesterday is that, in a system, your staff has to go to 10 different places to get 3 different pieces of information. It's terribly inefficient. Happens every day. Someone calls your dispatcher, or you call a dispatcher, and you say, hey, can you tell me what's happening with this particular shipment? You have the shipment number ready, you're ready to rock and roll, and they ask you for a bill of lading, right? So now you got to go back into your system. Those seconds, minutes, and hours add up to days, weeks, and months over the course of a year, over the course of a lifetime, over the course of the history of a business, right? And I think the first thing that we did internally was to start to manage outside the system itself, to normalize that language so that those pieces of the communication are there. Not necessarily so much on the importance of the content of the message, but making sure that we're all starting from a similar place so that when we do talk about it, it doesn't take us forever to get there, and we're not turning our tires.
If you want to jump in on the digital quality or what you're doing for digital.
It kind of depends on what data you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So the first question, one of the things that I deal in the most is forecasting data. How do you know, talk about point of sale for Walmart, down to the sales forecast, down to the actual order cycle. How do you know that that's actually happening? Well, you have to go back and audit. You have to go back and figure out if a salesperson forecasted 100,000 cases, was it 100,000, was it 200,000, or was it 70,000? And kind of doing the after the fact, the post-mortem on it, which unfortunately it's people doing that. We don't necessarily have a great automated process for that. You just have to go back through and have people audit the sales forecast and hold people accountable if they're not right.
All right. Well, this has been a rapid fire, as we've digested everything we've learned this morning and talked about yesterday. And so I'd love to end on, if you could give everyone here like one word that for you, this is what I'm thinking about, like that's most important for me for what I'm doing in supply chain going forward. This is kind of the word that is resonating with me. So, Robert, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I'm going to break the rule a little bit. If it's past and present, the one word is proud. Be proud of what we've done. Even on the days in the last 2 years where you don't think you got it done very well, you know what? It could have been a lot worse than it was. You actually got a lot done through innovation, sheer will, and I know a lot of brute force. Very aware of that. But for going forward, holistic. We need to be thinking holistically. We are part of this network that Dr. Tompkins talked about, and that means we need to be thinking holistically.
For me, it's consistent. Can you hear me? Yep. So for me, it's consistency. That's more. I think you said aspirational. That's where I hope for consistency. All the bumpy charts that Eric showed. That's not any fun, and I don't expect that to stop necessarily. But I sure hope it does.
Yeah, and I'll say transparency. Right, we still have a lot of blind spots, and we gotta eliminate that.
Say now, if I had to expand on it right now, right? I haven't done a resume in 12 years, right? But have you ever gone back to a resume and you need one and you got to do it right now, but you have no idea what you should put on that resume because you don't know what you've been doing for the last 12 years. You've been doing it good, you've been doing it real well, but you have no idea what to put on it, right? So we've come out of an environment or a timeline where we have been drinking from a fire hose, but we have been doing it very well and we should be proud. But it's important to remember these things, right? Because we're going to see peaks, we're going to see valleys, and we're still going to have to execute in those timelines. The things that we have learned in the last 2 and 3 years, those are the same things that we're going to apply, maybe to a lesser degree, maybe to a greater degree, but they're the same tools that we're going to use. Think about what you've learned in the last 3 years. Think about what you've learned right now so that you can document it, so that you can expand from it, learn how to collaborate more, and use it in the future. We may not use it 100 years from now, but I assure you we're going to use it for at least the next decade.
That is fantastic. What a way to end. So consistency, now, transparency, and proud. Be proud of what we've done. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.